The first time I saw the number, I told myself it was a mistake. $11.40 gone from my checking account on a Tuesday, then $19 on a Thursday, then $6 and change the following Monday. Small enough that most people would never notice, small enough that most people would blame themselves for forgetting a subscription. But I am not most people. My name is Eleanor Voss. I am 72 years old, and for 35 years I sat behind a desk at a regional bank in Pennsylvania, approving loans and catching the exact kind of theft that hides inside numbers too small to matter. I raised my grandson Caleb myself, the last 11 years of his life, ever since his mother passed and his father decided fatherhood was a part-time hobby. I taught him to ride a bike in the parking lot of my old branch on Sunday mornings when the lot was empty. I kept his height marked in pencil on my pantry door frame, one line every birthday, all the way up past my shoulder. He used to sit at my kitchen table doing algebra homework while I did the actual books for the church fundraiser, and he'd ask me questions about interest rates, like other kids asked about baseball scores. I was proud of that boy in a way that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with the years I put in. So when those small transfers started appearing, my first instinct wasn't suspicion. It was worry. I thought someone had gotten my card number online, one of those skimmers at a gas pump, and I nearly called the bank to freeze everything right then. But something about the pattern stopped my hand. The amounts were too precise, too spaced out, always just under $20, always timed for a Tuesday or a Thursday afternoon, with quiet stretches between them, like someone pacing himself. That is not how a stranger steals from you. That is how someone tests a door to see how long it takes before anybody notices it's unlocked. I had seen this exact rhythm before, decades ago, sitting across from an employee I'd had to fire for skimming small amounts off cash drawer overages. Fraud examiners have a term for it. They call it salami slicing, shaving off thin pieces so small that no single slice draws blood. I recognized the knife before I ever saw the hand holding it. Caleb had been living with me for 4 months by then, 24 years old, between jobs, as he put it, sleeping in the room that used to be his mother's. He had my late husband Harold's crooked smile and a way of avoiding my eyes whenever money came up in conversation, which I noticed but chose, for a while, to explain away as simple embarrassment. Harold's old rocking chair still sat by the window in that room. Caleb liked to sit in it while he scrolled on his phone, and I liked seeing him there, even when I started to wonder what exactly he was scrolling toward. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I did what 35 years of training taught me to do. I pulled my own statements, every transaction, going back 4 months, and I laid them out across my kitchen table like index cards from an old case file. I circled every withdrawal under $20 in red pen. There were 14 of them. 14 small bites, totaling just under $200, each one occurring within an hour of Caleb being alone in the house with my laptop, which I'd left logged into my banking portal because I trusted him the way you trust someone you raised. I want to be honest with you, dear. That discovery didn't feel like anger at first. It felt like the floor tilting under a woman who thought she'd already survived every kind of loss life could hand her. But composure has always been my strongest muscle, and I decided to use it. Instead of accusing him outright, I asked him to help me set up 2-factor authentication on my accounts, telling him my memory wasn't what it used to be and I wanted an extra layer of protection. He agreed immediately, a little too quickly, and while he worked through the settings on my laptop, I watched his hands. A man innocent of wrongdoing does not flinch when his grandmother mentions fraud monitoring. Caleb flinched. Small, almost nothing, but I'd watched hundreds of nervous hands cross a bank counter over the decades, and I knew what nervous looked like, even when it tried to hide inside helpfulness. The withdrawals didn't stop. They got bolder. $22, then $31, then $45, the increments growing the way they always do once someone realizes the door stayed unlocked longer than they expected. That is the nature of this kind of theft. It never stays small once it goes unchallenged. It escalates precisely because silence gets mistaken for permission. 3 weeks after I started tracking the pattern, my neighbor Dolores Feeney mentioned over the fence that Caleb had asked to borrow $40 from her for gas money, promising to pay her back that same weekend. Dolores is 68, sharp as a tack, and she'd lent small amounts to half the neighborhood over the years, so she thought nothing of it. But it told me something important. He wasn't just quietly draining my account. He was building a second stream of cash from people who trusted him because they trusted me. The receipt was what settled it. I found it crumpled in the laundry from an electronics store 2 towns over, dated the same afternoon as one of my transfers. $60 cash for what the receipt described only as accessories. I didn't need a confession. I needed a pattern that couldn't be argued with, and now I had 3 separate strands braiding together. My bank statements, Dolores' story, and a receipt with a date and a place. I called my old colleague Raymond Cole, 69 years old, silver mustache, the fraud investigator I'd trained back when he was 26, and terrified of his first case. He'd retired the year after me, but still consulted for the bank part-time. I asked him to pull my account activity officially, not as a favor between friends, but as a documented fraud inquiry, the kind that generates a paper trail with a bank's letterhead on it. He agreed within the hour. Some relationships you build over 35 years don't fade just because you both stopped wearing the uniform. Raymond's report came back 4 days later. 14 unauthorized transfers over 4 months, all originating from my home IP address, all occurring during windows when my banking session had been left open on a device only one other person in that house used. It wasn't hearsay anymore. It was documented, time-stamped, and signed by a man whose professional signature still carried weight at that branch. I sat Caleb down at that same kitchen table where I'd once graded his algebra homework. I didn't raise my voice. I laid the folder in front of him, closed, and let it sit there for a moment before I spoke. "You've been taking money out of my account since March," I said. 14 times. I have the dates. He looked at the folder like it might bite him. "Grandma, I don't know what you're talking about." The withdrawals started at $11.40. They ended at $45, small enough that you thought I wouldn't notice the pattern. But I built my career noticing patterns like that. I needed gas money sometimes, that's all. I would have paid you back. Then explain the receipt from the electronics store the same afternoon as one of the transfers. Explain why Dolores lent you $40 for gas the same week you didn't need gas money from me at all. He went quiet. His jaw tightened the way Harold's used to when he'd been caught in something small and didn't yet realize how much bigger it had become in the retelling. "It's your money," I told him. "I could have cut you off the day I noticed the pattern. I didn't, because I wanted you to understand something before this went any further. I spent 35 years watching what happens to people who think small theft stays small. It never does. It grows until somebody finally stops it." "So what happens now?" he asked, and for the first time his voice actually shook. "Now you pay back every dollar on a schedule Raymond and I will set together, with a ledger you sign each month. And you find your own apartment within 60 days. Because trust isn't something you get to keep testing indefinitely." He tried one more time. "You're really going to do this over $200? "I'm doing this because $200 was never the real number. The real number was how many times you were willing to lie to my face while sitting in your grandfather's chair." The room went silent after that, the kind of silence that isn't empty. It's just finally honest. Caleb moved out 6 weeks later into a small apartment across town, paid back the full amount over 4 months exactly as we'd agreed, ledger signed every time, no argument. We still speak, though differently now, careful in a way that wasn't there before, And I think that carefulness is honest, too. Harold's rocking chair sits empty by the window again, and some mornings I still glance at it out of habit before I remember why. If there's something I hope you carry from this, dear, it's 3 things. Check your own statements line by line at least once a month, because thieves, both inside and outside, a family count on nobody reading past the total. Keep one relationship alive from your working years, because a colleague with real authority can turn a suspicion into documented proof faster than any argument you could make alone. And never mistake love for an excuse to skip the paperwork, because the people who love you the most are exactly the ones who deserve the clearest boundaries. I'd love to know, has anyone in your family ever tested a boundary you thought was unbreakable? And how did you handle catching it in time? Being old doesn't mean being finished, dear.